We all want to live a full, meaningful, and inspired life, yet so commonly that coveted spark that is so necessary somehow disappears over the years. In today's episode, Stephanie James, author of The Spark Igniting Your Best Life, helps us to understand where that spark originates from and how to hang on to it over the years so that each day can be full of inspiration, meaning, and joy. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health Podcast. Thanks for tuning into the show. Today's guest is Stephanie James, and we are going to go through her new book, The Spark Igniting Your Best Life. Now, I want to make a note first that I apologize, but in the recording, I'm not too sure exactly what happened, but for some reason on whenever I'm the one talking, there was little glitches in my audio and video. It seemed like it would speed up a little bit sometimes, and you might miss a couple of words here or there. For the most part, you'll still get the gist of the conversation. Her audio and video was perfect, so I'm not too sure what actually went wrong with that, but you'll just kind of hear sometimes where it feels like it kind of skips a little bit some of the words that I was saying. So I apologize for that, and I'm trying to figure out what went wrong with that right now. So before we get into that episode, I want to just make a couple of announcements. There's three big things that are happening on December 21st that I want to bring awareness to. So the first thing is that is winter solstice, and that is when we are going to be doing the December 21st global synchronized meditation. And I will have a link in that in the show notes. And that's going to be in the show notes on the website at the Inspire Health Podcast. And it will also be in the show notes when you go to the YouTube channel at Dr. Jason Loken ND. And when you go there, please subscribe so that you don't miss any other upcoming events that are going on. I post videos on a number of things coming up, as well as every week when we have a new episode. And on there, you will see the link for the global synchronized meditation. On the YouTube channel, I have a few videos already talking about it and how to get there. But I'm going to be hosting that with Lance Shuttler and with another person named Michael Jaco. And we are going to do a global meditation, synchronized meditation on December 21st. And we're going to sort of incorporate that along with a little bit of the Letters That Move the World movement as well. So join us there. There's a lot of power that happens when we do synchronized global meditations. And December 21st is a really powerful time astrologically. So there's a lot of light coming in at that time. So we want to focus our intent as much as we can, and we can create some real significant healing in the world when we do that together. So you can click the link, and it's on the Facebook page. You can join there, and then you can meet us. We're going to be meeting up at 10:15 Eastern Standard Time on December 21st. So that's the first one. Second thing that is happening on December 21st is that is also going to be when we release, or that is when G-Day is happening for Letters That Move the World, Intentional Acts of Gratitude. So that is the day where we will start the process of actually sending out our letters of gratitude. So between December 21st and between January 7th, that time period is when we are releasing our letters. So we're hoping to kind of incorporate the global meditation as a bit of a kickoff for that too. So if you haven't already, start making your list and start planning who you want to write letters to. Start to write them as you feel the impulse to do so and you feel moved by it. And then between the 21st of December and January 7th, we're going to be releasing those letters. And let's all kind of do it together. The more people we've got, the bigger tidal wave we can create. And then the third thing, what we're super excited about, is we are creating a brand new series, and we're still filling in a couple of more guest spots, but it looks like we're going to have at least 11 to 15 guests, and it's going to be pretty epic. This series is going to be called Science, Mysticism, and Beyond, Humanity's Next Phase of Evolution. And we've got some pretty amazing guests, and we just started doing interviews this last while for them, and they're going to be pretty big. So it's going to be a little different than some of the stuff I've done before, but like I said, it's science, mysticism, and beyond. We kind of go way out of the box to try and bring some big messages that are going on in the world at this point in time and how we can support the next phase of evolution. And there is a next phase of evolution that is taking place right at the moment. And so we want to shed some light on that and bring some different people in with very eclectic backgrounds to help bring the information that we have found so helpful for myself and for my wife, Taya, as far as trying to navigate this crazy past year and what has made sense to us and what I think is going on from a much bigger perspective. So we're really excited about that episode, and that's going to be releasing as well on December 21st. So 3 big things happening on the 21st. Also, if you haven't had a chance to go and check out the EMF harmonized products, absolutely necessary. Go check them out. I talked about them just last week with the episode with Lance Shuttler. If you haven't listened to the episode, go listen to it. This is really important information, and more so now than I think ever. This is technology that is cutting edge. I have tried lots of different EMF technology to try and mitigate the effects of negative EMF exposure. Now, these are the things that are on from your computer, from your cell phone, from your router, from your tablets, all of these types of things. There's really easy technology that helps to mitigate that. And I've never seen the technology quite as the way EMF harmonized has it. And most of the ones I've used before try to block it. EMF Harmonize has this really unique technology where it literally creates a frequency that nullifies the negative frequencies from the EMF that we get exposed to. And I even put on my router the other day, and I just feel going into that room, it feels different. You can tell that it's not as heavy and not as dense. Now, the other thing that I want to focus on that you might not be aware of is that one of the other products that EMF Harmonized has are these body discs. And the body discs are really cool because they're actually technology that you can put on your body to help to mitigate inflammation. So when we have an inflammatory response in the body and we've got pain or soreness, we can actually do something about that. So I want to show you this little video here on the YouTube, and this is from the EMF Harmonized site. And this is research that was done by a scientist from Duke University, and they were looking at thermography scans. And so you can see on here, this fellow that they've got it on right here has a lot of inflammation. That's where you're going to see redness throughout the area. And then after placing 4 body discs on there, you can see where the red starts to actually shift in the inflammatory response and starts to go more to greenish and yellow. So substantial changes, and you'll see that on the back, on the calves, and then on the hands. And so a lot of these people that have this inflammatory response from either some sort of damage, from sort of a disease process, it could be like arthritis, but they've got, or it could be just posture related, it could be a musculoskeletal or sprain injury, but inflammation causes a lot of different problems in the body. And I think it is so fascinating that you can use this technology to put them on. It's been researched and shown to help to relieve that inflammatory response and help to take down aches and pains. So I've been using them on a strained knee that I recently had, and I've got them on both sides, and I'm finding that it's just even within the day of using them, it's already starting to kind of shift that and get the inflammation down and promote healing. So something else to look at. Now, where you can go to get them. Now, if you go to my YouTube page at Dr. Jason Loken ND, you will see any of the videos. And when you go to those videos, just click on one. So you'll see the one that we recently did, the promotional video for the EMF episode that we did with Lance Shuttler. You'll see when you go on there, you'll see 10% off your EMF harmonized order. Click this link. All you have to do is click the link. It'll take you right to the site. You can go through. Anything you get will automatically have 10% taken off. And again, these are small. These are like little sticker discs that you put on. They're not even like the bulky sort of plasticky things that you've used before with, if you've used this type of technology or something to try and mitigate EMF. They're usually a bit of a bulkier thing that I've had to put on my computer or my phone, and then it doesn't fit in the case properly or something. These are literally like a sticker that you put on, and through the heat that gets generated from the skin when you're using the body disc or from the machine itself, that's what releases the frequency that actually starts to mitigate the EMF. It's pretty fascinating. So take a look at there. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, you can click on the links on the YouTube videos. I'll have them in the show notes as well, and check it out. All right, guys, enjoy the next episode, and I'll talk to you soon.
Welcome to the Inspire Health Podcast. Your life is about to get a whole lot better. Have you ever felt like you tried everything and yet still couldn't find the answers or the solutions that you were seeking? Whether you're dealing with chronic illness, physical or emotional pain, I want you to know that your body is the most sophisticated machine on planet Earth. Your body holds unfathomable wisdom. Trust in it and learn from it. Know that there are answers and there are solutions to your specific health challenges. And we will be uncovering all of them here on the Inspire Health Podcast. I'm so excited to be a part of your healing journey. Your transformation starts now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health Podcast. Today's guest is Stephanie James. Stephanie, a dynamic public speaker, published author, and filmmaker. Stephanie delivers her message in a powerful way to help others find their own internal sparks and create their best lives at the next level. Nominated Fort Collins Woman of the Year in 2014, Stephanie has an unrelenting commitment to help others ignite their best life, become the best version of themselves. The Spark is a worldwide weekly podcast created to help your best life. Her guests are luminaries of psychology, innovation, science, entrepreneurialism, and more. Her book, The Spark Ignites Life, is an excellent guide. Step by step, Stephanie shows how to examine beliefs that don't serve us, ways to develop more authentic, rewarding relationships, including with ourselves, and how to approach each day best. Her soon-to-be released film, When Sparks Ignite, is about the challenges we all face and how those challenges should become the match point, ignite something amazing within us, and then become our gift to the world. I love the sound of that. I'm super excited for when that comes out. And Stephanie, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much. I'm just so pleased to be here with you.
Oh, I think it'll be really fun. I read your book and loved it. And there's so many things with a lot of the work that we do with Inspire Health podcasting too, stuff that I do in clinic as well. And I think it's like so incredibly important. I think nowadays at this time, more than ever, I feel like the work talking in order to get to a place where we can live our best lives. I think that all of the stuff you're talking about in your book is like basically it's like 101 on what needs to get done in order to even get to that place. And I feel like people are at a precipice in a lot of ways where it's like they're wanting to get to this next phase of their life, but they don't know how to get there. And I really do think your book is a very good step-by-step way of getting them to that point.
Oh, thank you so much. That was so important to me, that the book was accessible. So many times I think we read some of these books and they're written for our peers instead of like written for everyone, and we're all on this continuum together. And that often is the challenge. How do we get from here to where we really want to be, where we're thriving and resilient? Yeah, and really see ourselves taking that next step in our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people are ready for it more than ever now too. And so before we get, can you just tell us a little bit, how did you get into the whole area of being a passion of yours and supporting people and getting to be their ignited life? How do they, to even get people to spark their life into something more meaningful and bigger than we're currently doing? How did you get so excited about that?
Well, I feel super blessed in my career. I've been a psychotherapist for 14 years, but I've been in the mental health field for 30. So I've really gotten to work with all walks of life. I worked for 10 years with elementary school kids. I've worked in adolescent psych. I've worked with adults in geriatrics, developmentally disabled. So I really got this beautiful, eclectic experience. So, and I've always just kind of had that just innate passion. I just found a picture of myself at 4 years old where I was very delicately holding on to a friend's shoulder and holding her hand, and had this very empathetic look. So I think it was really innate in who I was, just loving other people, wanting the best for other people. But then through that eclectic experience, seeing that people can move and change and that we're not stuck. And so things really accelerated for me, I think, in private practice, where I got to go beyond some of the constraints I had in the elementary school at the time as a counselor, to like, these are the different things. I love like challenging my clients, like, let's look at what we can do in 30 days. And the more I would learn about how we can reprogram our thoughts and behaviors and literally do shifts, big shifts in 30 days, that really got me excited. So it just kept continuing in this really wonderful blossoming of private practice, and then the radio show and podcast, and talking and speaking with, thought leaders and luminaries, and then it just continues to expand. So I think that's what's been exciting, is my own spark has ignited, is like realizing, wow, I can be kind of the conduit to help other people experience that as well.
Yeah, I love it. I totally get it too. It's such a similar pathway for me as well. Starts in clinical practice. I think big people are actually clinicians when they work with people one-on-one or in groups. you learn so much, and you kind of learn pretty quickly that it's like you could really help as much as you wherever you are at, right? So it's a constant reminder of like, oh, those are where I've got my own blocks. As you work with some of your blocks, you see patients or clients that are very similar blocks. That then I mean, it's just this way that it tends to work. You kind of draw these people in that are in some ways on a similar path to stuff that you've done yourself, and then again you get to the point where you want to outreach it to more than just an individual person one at a time. And Juan's usually books and the podcasts and all these different things too. So I love it. And it's such a way to outreach in such a big way for people too.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Stephanie, tell me what you mean by igniting your best life. So from your perspective, what does that mean? Because I'm that's going to be different for a lot of people, but sort of talking about igniting best life, some people I think don't even have a something to hold on to what that even looks like or could feel like. So just to create a bit of an opening for people to step to, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, thank you. That's such a great question because I think that, first of all, I think it's important maybe to define the spark and then,
Absolutely.
igniting that best life. Because for me, I mean, the spark is already that essence that's us. Sometimes people call it the God spark or my spirit. But the essential piece to know is that we all have this already inside of us. So we all have this spark that is us. And I think it's, the spark of passion. It's the spark of joy and happiness and living fully. And it's not just about being happy, it's about fully embracing this human experience.
Mm-hmm.
So living our best lives, I guess, or igniting our best lives, it's exactly that, doing the work so that we can be as clear as conduits as possible. Or as the Sufis say, we would lift the veils that are keeping that spark from really shining at its greatest potential.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really being able to start this relationship. One of the ways in is to ignite the spark is learning how to truly have a friendship with yourself. I talk about befriending yourself and how people oftentimes are like, oh yeah, you hear that all the time, be your own best friend, just love yourself. But the reality is we have to learn how to do that. And so I think that that's one of the essential pieces in igniting our best life. Being our friend as we listen to our inner self. We start getting in touch with what is it that does light me up? Like you said, a lot of people don't even know what that is for them. They haven't defined that. And so there's so many different techniques, as you know, that can help us start sorting that out. Hearing that inner voice, meditation, mindfulness practice. And, the thing I talk to my clients about a lot too is it's 10 minutes. You start with 10 minutes. We always think get from where I am right now to where I want to be, that mountain can just feel insurmountable. Like I
Yeah.
cannot do this. And the truth is we start by befriending ourselves, and maybe it's showing up every morning. We start building a relationship with ourselves by saying, okay, I'm making a commitment every morning. I'm going to do 10 minutes of meditation. I might do 10 minutes of journaling, and then I'm going to exercise for half an hour. So interestingly, every day that I do that, I am gaining trust with myself. I'm making myself a priority in my own life, and I start feeling that spark truly igniting. I have more energy, I have more to give,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just feeling clearer. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, well, I think befriending you're such a good it's a really important part of it. And like, a lot of times people think, I've heard that so many times. I know I should look in the mirror and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's really a foundational step. I really feel it's a foundational step because that, to me, is that when talking about that essence or that inner arc or however people like to use for them, some people call God consciousness or that inner physician or whatever you want to use. But to me, it's like when you're connecting to that, you can't help but you are and be your best. So it's almost like if you're not connecting to that first, it's like a heck of a lot of work trying ways to love yourself when you're not connecting to that sort of essence and that feeling of it. But if you can kind of get to there first and make your maybe how do I get that inner self? Like I love the definition that always I loved was in the yogic traditions, they would look at this idea that everybody kind of took this scoop of water from the Sea of Brahman, which was sort of like God consciousness, and they took it in with themselves. And so that was called the Atma, the soul or the God, right? Everybody's one with that same consciousness within themselves. So there's no real separation of this is out there, it's inside, it's all the same thing. And to me, it feels like part of this journey is finding ways to connect to that. And I feel like when you connect to that, like you said, your spark, it tells you you will be lit up. And that's even the whole idea of Inspire Health podcast. It's that inspiration, inspired action naturally evolves from connect to those things.
Absolutely. So, and I love that too, because I think we get lost in this world thinking that our happiness is outside of us, our success is outside of us. So our best life, we can start looking at if we're not careful, oh, is if I, have this trip and I take this class and I own this home, and it's everything outside of us. And so it's got to start, right? It really does, with that essential place where we're going within. And it reminds me of this story I have to share with you from, gosh, it's probably been almost 20 years ago now. But I went to a class in San Francisco and it was a healing school. And as I walked in, Dr. Jaffe, who was the presenter, shook my hand, and I meet him, and he goes up and he's presenting. In the middle of his presentation, he points out into the audience and he says, hey, you there in the blue coat. He says, I have a message for you. And I'm like looking around, hoping that someone else is wearing the blue coat that I look down and realize I'm wearing. It's me. And he said, I have a message for you. And when he began to say what the message was, he said, and the message is, his mouth moved, but I couldn't hear him. And so I said, I'm sorry, I can't hear you. And he said, okay. He's like, this is interesting. You have a block. What I'm trying to tell you is, and as he started to speak again, all the air conditioning units in the place came on, and nobody could hear him. So no one could hear him speak. And so by that point, everybody's laughing. And he's like, come up here, come up here. And so everyone, all these 40 people came and sat on the steps. And he says, my dear, this huge block that you have, what I'm just trying to tell you is this: stop trying. Stop trying. Because my whole life, up until that point, I thought that happiness, success, whatever it was outside of myself. And the beautiful part of the program that week was really learning how to go within and how to really ignite that divine spark within you. And so, and I say, ironically, at that point, I had this card that was sitting beside my bed that said, I had it framed, that said, all the strength, all the wisdom, all the beauty you're seeking are right there inside of yourself. I was like, oh, I should have read that card a little more often.
That is such a big one. The idea of stopping. I talk about this a bit, even when I kind of talks on here, just to kind of bring awareness to certain things. But I feel like we have been brought up in a world where it's like hard work is really valued, and we're not necessarily putting down work, but you can connect to things in a lot of other ways that don't require hard work. Like, I'll give you an example. I had for a long time, because my parents had ended up having kind of pretty relationship that ended up in a divorce, right? Best they've eventually done. But I had a template in my head that relationships were hard work, had to keep trying. And that eventually ended up just bringing up more challenges to have, trying to work hard and keep trying to make things. And one day I remember saying that, well, I don't want it to be hard work. So it let me reframe it to a point where it's like, well, what do I want? It requires love. It requires commitment. It requires education. It requires honesty. I kind of went through, what does it really require, but not hard. And really, after that, it was like a dramatic shift took place. And it ties me to some of the blocks that maybe we have to creating this, or connecting to this spark and then creating this life that we create, often is with these subconscious belief patterns, God. I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit about these roadblocks that get in the way and where they've come from, and then how we navigate those, because so much of that's where we will unconsciously sabotage that life that we often can see, but we still can't.
Yes. I think Bruce Lipton really spoke about it really well. When I was speaking with him, one of the things he talked about is that how we're so programmed the first 7 years of life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like our brain's always in theta brainwave state. So that's when we're just, extracting all this information from our environment. And the things that people say to us or about us really stick. And they go subconscious. We're not even aware we're thinking them. They become those patterns. So it also could be like in your example, when you're watching your parents maybe work, or you see dad's really, really hard worker. Okay, that goes subconsciously then. To be a really good man, I got to be a hard worker, just like dad. And we get them, of course, all through our lives. And oftentimes what happens, unfortunately, when it feels more traumatic, the more traumatic the incident is, the more our brain is holding on to that belief.
Mhm.
Whatever was, like, let's say, connected. If you were in high school and the first love of your life totally breaks your heart, then maybe there's a part of you that says, relationships aren't safe. And even if you don't consciously think that, like, we know that goes below the surface and it starts guiding our behavior. So I think one of the first things to overcoming these roadblocks is to be aware of what those limiting beliefs are. Because again, they're so subconscious. And until you do some of the things like you're talking about, we don't realize that that's what's governing our life. It wasn't until I took about 8 years ago, I took a course on the reticular activating system
Mhm.
and was understanding how that works and how we can program it for good, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the exercises was, find something that's really a limiting belief for you, and we're going to help you to rewrite that by doing this journaling exercise where you write the affirmation. Then every day for 30 days, you write what's the evidence that showed up about the affirmation. Well, and I've done my therapy work and I've done a lot of spiritual work, and not far, far, far from perfect, but I was struggling to find what was that limiting belief that was kind of holding me back. Interestingly enough, when I floated back to my own parents' divorce when I was 13, it was the same thing. Because I was like, gosh, I'm so driven. I'm the oldest in my family. I put myself as a single mom through grad school, and I started thinking of all these things. I've always just driven myself. And it's like, oh my gosh, that behavior came out of that 13-year-old little girl whose
Mhm.
parents got divorced. And at that time, everything was so crazy. The subconscious belief is, I can't trust anyone. I can't rely on anyone else to do it for me or to show up for me. So I have to do it myself. Now, I'd worked on that in other elements or other aspects of my life, but how interesting that that was keeping me from some very interesting things. And as I started doing that exercise, they said, blow it up as big as you can, so you see evidence of it showing up in your life. So I'm like, okay. So mine was, I'm completely loved and supported by the universe. Now, at first I started getting feedback, every day as I'm journaling what showed up. I was like, wow, I get a lot of very beautiful, supportive texts from my girlfriends, like, I love you, sweet friend, thinking of you, all this stuff. Pretty soon I'm noticing, wow, people are really kind to me. Every place I go, whether it's a cashier or a barista, and literally in that first week, I had 2 baristas give me a free cup of coffee. They're like, we just love when you come in here, 2 different baristas. And so I'm like, okay, I'm starting to notice this. And 2 weeks in, I had an incident where my basement had flooded, and my daughter and I had been gone to Estes Park that day. We lived in Cheyenne, Wyoming. We come back and there's literally, an inch of water standing in the basement. I had just spent like literally almost all my savings on, just remodeling this house. We just moved in. Long story short, as I go outside, the neighbors are all out. This beautiful sunny day. I'm like, I don't know what to do. Pretty soon I've got like 6 neighbors downstairs, shop vacuuming my floor, fans. Everybody's helping. And then the biggest one was one of my girlfriends lived 4 blocks, or not even 4 blocks, excuse me, 4 houses away. And she saw all the commotion. So she comes down the street. She's like, what's going on? And I tell her. She leaves and comes back 15 minutes later and hands me $1,000 check. And she's
Wow.
like, I know you don't have this right now because you've just spent all this money. You and your daughter need hot water tomorrow morning. My husband has a truck. Go pick out a new water heater and we'll get it hooked up.
Wow.
So at that point, it blew the doors off of that old belief. I couldn't do that anymore. And I wasn't even aware of how it was showing up in my life. But
Mhm.
by not focusing on it and noticing it, it's that principle in physics, right? What we focus on expands.
Totally. Yeah.
And as soon as I began to focus on it, it showed up everywhere in my life and literally changed my life. My relationships with my girlfriends, oh my gosh, they were like, thank you for coming to us with problems or asking for help.
Mhm.
You never did that before, because all of a
Yeah.
sudden I had given myself permission because I knew I'd be supported.
Right. Yeah. And then that's for them too. Then they get to show up for you in a certain way, right?
Yeah. I mean, and
Yeah.
it was really beautiful. It really also changed my relationship with my mother because I allowed her, again, I don't have to do it all myself.
Hmm.
So I was always a super loving person, but it's like, yeah, you don't have to do it at that level. You can rely on other people. They really will show up and support you, and they've always been there. That's that essential piece of, we've got to identify what those limiting beliefs are first. And as we start to see those show up, and there's exercises you can do where you're literally just go through all the different areas of your life, whether it's financial, relationships, career, and then you think of, what is the thought that is keeping me from being where I want to be? And sometimes that we don't even realize, like we've just been talking about, it's from our childhoods. It's a thought like, oh, my dad would always tell me, rich people are unhappy. Well, guess what? That becomes something maybe that's blocking me or limiting me from really attaining wealth.
Yeah, it's such an important piece, and I really feel like that's like at the almost regardless of where we want to go. It's like at some point we have to come head with what our beliefs are, and I just like a good way that I navigating our know if direction that's moving positive place or not is how am I feeling on a regular basis and what's my life showing me, and it's like if I compare those two things, then that's all good. If my life is showing me stuff over and over again, like for example, prior to me having that recollection around the hard work with relays, it was a part where I was sitting there after another and it was, am I missing? But that was what allowed to kind of actually sit for a bit and really connect to what was going on. And that's what to get. I mean, what's kind of when you just things down and make a choice to observe what's going on and be reflective and know. Honestly, I just sincerely ask, inside or even out loud, the answers will start to come when we are ready to receive them. And so at that point, all of a sudden it's like, I remember getting bombarded with memories that like pushed aside, didn't even realize, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And it was sort of this, it all made sense and became very clear. And now that then I was able to make a choice that I didn't do those same things anymore. And then we have to kind of those new steps and make them action steps in our world, right? And do the things that are going to bring it. But it's such a big piece. So I love that you focused on that in your book and you go through some different ways of kind of breaking that down for people too.
And it really is. That becomes the life lens that we're looking at. And obviously the life lens we have is colored with all these beliefs, our past experiences. And so we need to make sure that we're adjusting the lens or clearing off the lens so we can see the bigger picture. Like you're saying, this field of possibilities and potential.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked about just a little bit at the beginning, but what are ways that people start? This kind of goes together, but what are that people can start to slow connect that who they are, their self, and what are the ways then that people can actively start the process of befriending themselves when the reality is most people react to themselves more like an enemy than a friend. So where do we begin that road for people? What are some starting places?
Yeah, I'm also a really big, I just encourage people to find a partner, even if it's just an accountability partner,
Mhm.
so that you also at first might have someone that you say, hey, I'm doing my work. No matter what it is, whether you're just starting with, like I said, the 10 minutes of meditation, or you're going to start with some affirmations or breaking some things down. One of the things we notice when we've seen this research with when people are trying to get fit and they're working out, if they have a workout partner, I mean, it's like exponential how high it is, how much more high it is if they're going
Yeah.
to follow through. So I really do encourage people to find someone that can be that accountability partner. And then I really think just allowing yourself, first of all, that gift of time. It's really easy to push our own needs aside if you're a parent or you feel like your job is very demanding. So the very first portal in is designating, and again, you can start with half an hour. It's think about all the different things you do. We're clicking on our phones, we're staring at screens, we're doing all these other things. So you're gifting yourself with half an hour. The other thing I think is important is as we're thinking of this, to also say this is not selfish. This is one of the most beautiful things we can actually do, because it is a gift. Then not only do we give ourselves, but we give to the people around us. Because when we have resources and we're cultivating this inner relationship with ourselves, we respond from a very different place. We react to life in a very different way. And so I think even when I get it, I mean, yes, I have people all the time that are in my clinical office that are coming in and a lot of self-loathing, a lot of negative messaging. if in that half an hour, and I think we've got to look at it a couple different ways. How do you take care of yourself in a few ways, even if you're feeling resistant? Break it down into small pieces. That's why I say you start with 10 minutes of meditation. If you're not able to be quiet in your own mind, then do a guided meditation. It will still put you into that same theta brainwave state. We want to be in that place where we can receive some of the things that we're talking about. That helps break down some of those barriers. And also, I love journaling exercises in the morning. Even if you're not feeling it at first, we're programming the way that our mind thinks. So if we wake up every morning and the journaling exercise we do is, this sounds again very simplistic, but I would say think of all the things you can think of that you feel grateful for and allow yourself to marinate for a minute upon them. After you write it all out, just put your hand on your heart, let yourself really let those feelings marinate. So you're letting them count. You're telling your brain and our brains, which are always, we have this natural negativity bias. So they're always going to be scanning the environment for a threat. And so it's like, negative experiences or negative thoughts are like Velcro in the brain, right? And positive experiences and thoughts are like a Teflon pan, they slide right off. So we're saying to our brain, pay attention. If I marinate on it and I think of it and I let the feelings come up, I'm giving it that stickability.
I love
Okay,
it. Yeah.
so these are the kind of things that are going to start changing that paradigm that we hold in our mind, or that relationship that we hold within our heart with ourselves. Again, getting out and exercising, as we know, just 30 minutes or 20 minutes. You can start with 20 minutes. If all you did was this 30-minute routine, you start doing that in the morning, that's what is the doorway to start opening this up into a larger and larger realm. I always say, think of it like if you were cultivating a brand new friendship with someone, you wouldn't trust them right away. You wouldn't be like, oh, I'm going to tell you all my deepest, darkest secrets and rely on you to come, pick me up every, morning at 6 o'clock. We just don't do that. We have to grow a relationship with others. And that's the same thing with us in this world of immediate gratification. It's like, okay, I'm focusing on myself today. I want to love myself by tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
And, the reality is it's going to take some time to cultivate that relationship where you can start really looking into yourself and at yourself and saying, yeah, I trust me to show up for myself. I'm going to be there. I am going to take care of me. And you start seeing the results very quickly when you start letting that intention, or we said, as you're focusing on that, you are going to start seeing more and more and more of it. And so if you gave yourself a 30-day window, and I love this, I do this all the time. If I had my calendar, I'd hold it up for you. But when I do my morning routine and I'm doing those things of self-care, I practice what I preach. At the end of that day, I'll put a heart on the calendar.
Yeah.
Because it's like a heart of, I was like loving myself today. I was taking care of me. And it's so cool at the end of the month to see this whole page full of hearts.
Yeah.
So it's a cool way to stay,
So
go
funny
ahead.
because it's like that's so the kind of stuff that you would have done as a kid, right? You get like, you'd give your kids certain acts to do, and whatever they're doing, they'd put their heart or star or what they want to do as it's sort of it's this fun kind of natural rewarding yourself certain things, right? And in so many ways, it's like if we can just go back and not think that just because we're adults, things are totally different than what they were like kids. Stuff is very much and it's actually better in a lot of treat ourselves very much like that. And in doing that, you're creating these new neural network pathways, and I think that you're saying a lot of them seem simplistic. I would honestly say that the bigger truths that keep coming up for me over and over again are the simplistic. They are the simplistic things that almost people put to the side because they seem too simplistic. It's conditioned to need something that is much more harder and difficult and requires more energy and all these types of things actually work, or something that's just super easy helping along those lines to take everything away. But these simple things like about people have to do is just start to do them. And that's where it really happens. It's like when you start to do them, rather than just maybe think about doing them, to experience it. And that's going out of nature. People know for the most part, going out of nature helps so many things. I mean, the neurochemical see that lights up when you spend time in nature or when you exercise or do different things is more profound than you could get from most medications. But it's like if you go and start doing it, then you start to experience it, right? And so I totally agree with you. I think people just need to make little commitments and honor them. And when you make little commitments and you follow through with it, you build more momentum on it, right? And you start to trust yourself more. You know you can get through it. I heard Pema Chodron talking about once unconditional confidence. And it's like we start to develop this unconditional confidence in ourselves over time as we go through difficult, challenging experiences and know that we can come to the other side of them. And we just sort of build this over time through the way we're living, move our way through experiences. Now, you also have the concept of bookends, and I think this fits well with what we just talked about. So what do you mean by bookend for a person's day?
Yeah, I love this concept because it really is important how we come into our day, how we're going to prime our mind and body, and also how we finish our day. Because as we finish our day, we're also going back into that theta brainwave state. And that's when our brain is most susceptible to input. And I love, there's this old Wayne Dyer, it's about maybe a 5 to 10 minute audio that you can listen to. But what he talks about is the essential part of that last 5 minutes of the day. And it's like, when you think about that, it's like, right, whatever I'm doing or thinking about those last 5 minutes, I'm going to be marinating on that the next 7, 8, 9 hours. So we don't want to be listening to the news before we go to bed, or right when we wake up in the morning, for that matter. I always say to people,
even possibly throughout the day.
yeah. I mean, I heard somebody say that you could listen to the news every other day for 10 minutes. You know exactly what's going on. It's so repetitive. You're going to be fine. So, and not being on your phone and not doing all these other things that are lighting up certain areas of our brain. It's like, let's just put the screens down first thing in the morning, last thing at night, so that we can put in our minds what we really want to. So the concept of bookends is, and they're different. I mean, one of the things I love is that 5-minute journal that starts the morning off with writing 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things that would make today really great, and then positive affirmations. So you're kind of priming your mind that way already. That could be part of your journaling exercise. And then you can go on to your meditation, your exercise. And I wanted to especially say, thank you for bringing up nature, because that's such an essential piece. And it doesn't have to be that you live by a forest. I think people sometimes think nature is that. Yeah. Every morning I go into my backyard, even when there's ice on the ground, even when there's snow on the ground, I go out barefoot when I let out my dog and touch the earth and look at the sky and just take deep breaths in. And that does help set my day. I feel in touch with something bigger than myself. Mm-hmm. So then we go through our day. We've already kind of primed if we do this morning thing. And at the end of the day, with the 5-minute journal, what they say is, what are the 3 things that made today really great? So then you come back and you're able to say that. But then the other question is, what is one thing that would make today even better? And that's not about punishing yourself. It might be, if you're trying to eat really well, it might be, one thing that would make today even better is if I chose grapes instead of, candy or whatever. Yeah. But it's just to set into your conscious mind what you want to do. Now, my favorite thing to do for my bookend, how I want to prime my mind before I go to sleep, is is for anyone to get a stationary object that has, some kind of meaning to them. I have this beautiful orange stone that one of my friends gave me from a creek in front of her home in Arkansas, and my favorite color is orange. So it's this beautiful orange smooth stone. And I hold it, and as I hold it, because that's muscle memory. So some people have like a little charm, or they have something with, an angel on it. It could be a rock or a shell, whatever that is. And you hold it, and as you're holding that, you think of, what is the best thing that happened today? And this is wonderful for 2 reasons. One is because the way that our mind works, anything we hold up, it experiences as happening now. So we'll get the chemical response. That's why if we're worried about, oh my God, what's going to happen tomorrow, the situation isn't happening now, but we're experiencing the anxiety in the present moment. Same thing about if we're worried about, or we feel regret or sad about something in the past. Again, it's not happening now, but we're experiencing the sorrow or the discomfort like it is happening now. Mm-hmm. Well, the beautiful thing is we can hold up what we choose. And by holding up this wonderful thing that happened, you get to re-experience how wonderful that felt. And even sometimes if you're having lots of rough days, it's not that it has to be this big, extravagant thing. Sometimes the best part of the day is snuggling with my dog. It can be just whatever that is that just felt amazing to you. And so by bringing it up twice, reinforcing the feeling, and then again, telling that part of your brain, hey, this is important. Pay attention to this. So as you continue to repeat the bookends of your day, your mind starts focusing more and more on seeing exactly those things that you want to be paying attention to. So it's great for carving those new neural pathways and changing what we're focused on.
Yeah, I think those are great ideas. And when you terminate, marinate's a really good term. Part of it's when you generate this feel, connect memory or the experience, it's like it's going to generate a certain sensation body, and that sensation is what we need to milk. Like that's what we need to sort of sit and let our body experience it, because that's when everything really lights up. And when you listen to people like Joe Dispenza, he would talk about how think is part of the field, how we feel is the magnetic part of the field, and together how we think and how we feel is what interacts with the world around us. That's what creates that electromagnetic field. And so they're talking about lights up that reticular activating system, like all these different terms, but essentially it's like making you create sensation inside, shift into a certain vibration or frequency, and then you will start to see the world differently. You can't help it. It's almost like nothing's changed in the world other than you're going to draw out the pieces that resonate with you better now than how they resonated with you before.
Yeah. Yes. And it really is that old adage, that it is believing is seeing, not seeing is believing. So
Right.
as we start shifting those thoughts, right, and we start changing our beliefs, that is what starts showing up in our world.
Mm-hmm. And
Such a powerful
yeah,
practice.
I mean, it's fun. Like it's like I feel like imagination was open. We were little kids, kind of got that imagining and playing with your imagination started to become a little bit of childlike thing, not something else. It's not doesn't really fit. So I feel like that's actually a major sour. It's like when you sit and imagine and through the imagination create and conjure sensations and feelings inside your body, that's what's going to do all of the things I'm talking about. You tie in that reticular activatum, you're going to be more in line, start to be able to move towards what it is that you're feeling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
really fun. Now, how does this work with romantic relationships? You have a section where you talk about the spark that everyone romantic relationship. And I think this is such a big one because I feel like, initially the novelty of the experience, you don't really requires anything else other than the pure novelty experience to spark for probably a good up to maybe 6. And then it starts, if people are married for long periods of time, that spark's like gone. So what's going on with that? What does that sort of happen, and how do people start to re-spark that back up again?
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things is exactly what you said. We're not built to sustain that initial spark phase. And it's what we see perpetuated in movies and TV. I mean, that's what's glamorized, right? Is that like that signifies the relationship. And it lasts 6 months, 9 months. Some people are super lucky, they get a full year. But most times, within the 6 to 9 month period, people see those sparks begin to fade. Which it is. If you think about it, it takes 9 months to make a baby. So it's like there's all these chemicals. It's really like this secret, to perpetuate our species instead of what's
Yeah.
supposed to be sustained. And when we get clear about that, we can realize that that kind of excitement spark, okay, that might not be exactly what we're going to experience later in our relationship. And it doesn't mean that the relationship can't be full of sparks. I mean, I've been a couples therapist for 14 years, and I love to do that work. That's so fun for me because the very first session when I have clients come in, what I have them do is this activity where they're learning something called, it's Harville Hendrix' old dialogue technique, where you're doing active, open-hearted listening to one another. You're not interrupting each other. You're mirroring back what I'm hearing. But we do it in this beautiful context of what the first conversation is around, okay, I want both of you to close your eyes for a moment and think back to when you first met and what it was that made you fall in love with your partner. So it can be physical, it can be personality traits, it can be the way that you were feeling, it can be as you got to know them better, the essence of who they were, what were the things that you just loved about this person. And so they take turns telling each other. Well, inevitably, every first session ends up in tears because people forget to language this kind of stuff to one another. And the importance of really, we were talking earlier about that lens and having a clear lens that we're looking through. We want to look at our partner with a clear lens. And the way that our mind automates things, it's a path of least resistance. So no matter how amazing our partner is, even if it's like the Stepford wife or, the most amazing husband, eventually our mind goes, oh yeah, I know what they're going to say. I know what they're going to do. Predictable, 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 because that's how our minds function. It doesn't mean we don't care. It's just a default of the way that our brain works. So it's really like intentionality is so key for clearing off that lens and doing the simple things. I mean, one of my, and I write about it in the book, one of my favorite clients I worked with was a couple that came in and they'd literally been together 43 years. And what they came in with were symptoms of what was wrong. He felt that she was always complaining about the wine he served. He fixed, dinner. And number one, she thought it was always too spicy. So she thought he's not being sensitive to me. And then he always chose wine to pair with the dinner. She never liked it. And he said, I'm a wine aficionado. She's, not being respectful. And so after doing this first activity, I said, homework for you guys, what I'd love you to do is right before you go to bed, and it can't be made up, but it can be the smallest thing you notice. I want you to tell each other just 3 things that you noticed during the day that you could appreciate about one another. Well, what had happened is these people had become so critical of one another and always like, that person's against me and they're not seeing me, they don't respect me. So it was amazing to me. In a week when they came back, there had been so much breakthrough because they were able to see each other and clear off some of that lens and go like, okay, now I'm looking for what I like about my partner. For the first time in years and in decades, were clearing off that lens and saying, oh, that does make me feel really good that you get my cup of coffee every morning. That's so sweet that you go down and you actually warm up my mug and you get me hot coffee, and wow. And then, she's coming back and saying, well, and I'm so thankful that you cook every night. I mean, the fact that I never have to go grocery shopping. And I mean, so pretty soon and it literally, I only had them in therapy about 3 months. It was like, it clicked and they got it. And that's just one small thing. But I think it's breaking up some of those ways that the brain's trying to automate everything. Mm-hmm. It's, introducing novelty, I think, is so essential in our relationships. And the element you and I have talked about, I think today, it's kind of come up several times, is the element of play. We're never too old mm-hmm. to play, to turn on some music and dance in the kitchen, to just let that inner self, inner child play, painting together. I don't care, taking dancing lessons, going for walks, playing tag even, I try to think about the things that my boyfriend and I do that continually bring like new life and new energy into mm-hmm. our relationship.
Yeah.
And it really is, so much of it is a sense of play and having fun. And we can be, of course, very deep and serious and analytical when we need to be. And it's like, let's keep looking at what's a food that we haven't tried yet. Before COVID, we could say, what's a restaurant we haven't tried yet? Let's go there, or let's go to a float tank, or let's go for this hike. Mm-hmm. But it really is, it's expanding your experience together and doing those novelty things together. Because we all know these couples where it's like, the only time they do something fun is with their friends outside of the relationship. And so our mind is pairing us with, it's like positive image. Oh, that's my girlfriend's. Instead of positive image. Oh, that's my partner, because we're exploring life together. We're doing fun things together. I mean, it could literally be reading a book where you're taking turns reading the pages and then discussing it together. Your mind's having to think a different way. You're having to relate in a different way than you're accustomed to. So just that little bit of, it's almost like sand in the oyster, if you will, or a salmon the clam, just a little bitty bit of agitation out of the regular routine, and it can create something really beautiful.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. It's that's really good advice, and I couldn't agree with you more around novelty. I know my life with, and we've got kids too. It's like, I mean, it can get really all encompassing. There's like a 3, a 4, and a 6-year-old. So it's like, I mean, it's all over the map most days. But I know the things that make the biggest impact and that keep ours alive is that I'm really fortunate too that we also both have a similar direction, so we can talk about a lot of things we're very interested in. So there's something that we're or thinking about, or donations, or doing a course together. And again, like just play, like you said, it's like, like you. I mean, I was just thinking, gosh, you got to invite you to a place and join one of the dance parties that go on family. Like that kind of stuff just lightens things up and it keeps it fun. And naturally is tied with novelty in a lot of ways too, because it's sort of this new fun experience every. So I think
Yes.
that's really, really, really important. And another thing that you do talk about a little book too is about the importance of recognizing how your partner would like loved. This was a game changer for me at point too. And I remember I first read the 5 Line Love and that one really, I mean, it not just in personal relationship with my parents, with friends, I mean, name it. But I'm wondering if you can that a little too, because that I feel really important.
Yeah, and Larry Dossey talks about this a lot, about the golden rule. We've heard about the golden rule, and the reality about it is it's not love the other person as do unto the other person as you would have done unto yourself. It's do unto the other person as they would have done unto them. So it's learning that, like you talked about, the love languages. I love the love languages, because if I'm giving you what you don't want, but I'm like, this is the way I feel loved. So I can give you a great example, because so my boyfriend's love language is not words of affirmation. And I find myself, I've had to back off because I am such a words of affirmation. So I could all day long go, oh my God, you're the most handsome, incredible, smart. I could just keep going. And he's like, yeah, okay. It's just not landing in the same way that he might like. And if I did something to help him out, making dinner, helping in the kitchen, maybe helping with a project, or we go do
Yeah.
something together, an acts of service, well, he's going to really, take that in and be like, oh my gosh, I feel really loved today. So, in the book, they talk about, it's like, you don't want to be talking English when your partner's speaking Swahili,
Hmm.
and speaking a very different language. And again, this is around that intention piece. So if I just go on automatic pilot, I'm going to be, just complimenting people all over the place and wondering why they're not responding in a certain way. So I want to attune, right? Be intentional and attune to what my partner needs, what makes them feel loved. And when we do that, it's so amazing, because we are speaking their language, and we are really being able to serve them then in a way that it just builds the relationship. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to break through some of these barriers couples come to, in my office. When they come into my office, they have this barrier that is really about learn how to see each other. Literally take a step back, clear off the lens, make it intentional, and speak each other's language. If someone's love language is physical touch, and another person's language, we could say again, is acts of service, these two are not necessarily going to be making each other feel real loved.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're working beside each other all day. Don't you feel loved? No, I
Yeah.
need you to just snuggle with me on the couch. I just need 10 minutes and I'm good. So, when I hear all these people's different love languages, it's not as difficult as we make it.
Yeah.
And we can learn that language, really tune into one another, and really enhance the love in our relationships both ways that it flows.
Yeah, it's such an important one, and I really feel most of the time like couples really want each other to feel loved, and sometimes they feel hurt because they think, well, I'm showing them I love them over and over again because I do this and I do this and I work so many hours, do it because I love them. It's like, and it's quality time, right? They want quality time spent. So it's just
Yeah.
speaking totally different languages. And I know if my wife was very much more time spent and physical touch, and I was definitely more on the words of affirmation and towards a little bit more of acts of service. So it was like, in my concept of what I was doing, I'd be thinking that I was doing that, but for her, she just needs me to come home, put the phone away, maybe even my schedule so that I can actually make it work so that I'm there, which we did all of those things, and it was makes everything changes. And so bit of advice for people: if your partner's a quality time spent, come home, turn your phone off. Like if you want to do what's going to drive a quality time spent person that feels love, and you're half the time really looking at your phone or doing something else, that's probably one of the things that makes them feel not at all, because they just need some one-on-one, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
And I
such
think,
powerful ones.
oh, it is. And the bigger picture of that, I think, is being present. Exactly when you were saying that, I think no matter what love language we speak,
Hmm.
learning to be present with our partners, where we're taking just some deep breaths when you get home and you're busy and you have all those things going on, to put away your phone, like anchor in your body for a few moments so that you
Yeah.
can really, again, see that partner and connect with them in that moment. I mean, that's where the magic happens. The power for all of us is in the present moment.
Yeah, well said. And equally just as important for your kids too. So partner and your kids
Yeah.
as well. Doesn't have to be time, but it is like when you're there, make it really juicy quality time, and that'll go a long ways. Rather than trying to do half doing this, half I mean, they call you on it right away anyways. One other to ask about the relationships was you had mentioned a little bit around forgiveness. And I thought this was really important. This is another perspective, because a lot of people do believe forgiveness is sort of like all or nothing. You're either holding on to it or you're not. There's no sort of in between. And in your book, you talk about a little bit, maybe some range in that. And I'd love to kind of get your feedback on that too. I mean, I know for me, I feel like forgiveness is not really an intellectual thing at all. It ultimately spontaneously arises at a certain time, and all of a sudden it's just there's like this letting go that just naturally happens when the timing seems right. And I've tried to make myself intellectually forgive. I don't really far with it. So I'm wondering what your perspective is on that, and around that doesn't always have to be 100%.
Yes. So, I think I think that is so important. I had never even imagined that concept of partial forgiveness until I had Harriet Lerner on my show. And she wrote a great book about why can't you say I'm sorry? And so it was talking about that whole forgiveness model. And I think it's so important because we can know, we know we can do some work where we're maybe writing a letter to the person that we're really angry with. We can get out some of our feelings that way. You never have to send it. And there's this realization that, if I'm harboring this ill will or I'm harboring resentment, it is not hurting the other person. It is hurting me. It is causing literally dis-ease in my body. So I want to be able to deal with it. And it's not always about, I'm going to forgive the other person so they feel better. I'm going to forgive so that I feel better. And again, not selfishly at all. But we're the ones harboring that energy and that angst. So the idea of partial forgiveness, what I loved her example was that she had done couples therapy with a couple where the husband had cheated and had an affair on the wife. And so they were in couples therapy, did their work for a year, really worked everything out. And a couple years later had come back to therapy because they were having difficulties parenting with their kids. It wasn't the original issue. And when they came back, at one point, the husband said to the wife, did you really forgive me for what we worked on before? Did you really forgive me for the affair? And I thought her answer was so interesting. She said, I forgave you 96% because we've worked really hard. We have an awesome relationship. It's better than ever. But that 4% that I will never forgive you for is that you brought that woman into our bed while I was at the hospital with my dying father. That piece isn't forgivable. And I loved that. And I know there's some people that don't agree with that. There's some people that think, oh, you've got to be at 100% full pardon. But it was almost as if she wasn't holding that against him, but she was still saying, I remember that. That was a huge pain point in my life. And I'm going to acknowledge that that really did exist.
Yeah.
So I thought it was not about not having healed inside of her. She felt healed. The relationship felt healed. And yet there are some things that do feel unforgivable.
Yeah. Well, and I think it still comes back to then she can look and just go, how am I feeling on a regular basis and how's my life showing up? And if that's doing all of that's moving in a nice way, she's probably done off then, right? Then I think that's working. Stephanie, I actually hit it over. So quickly, where people run, I mean, I have to have you on again. It's because I want to talk about your movie, but where can people learn the book, the work you're doing, the movie? Where can we send people?
So www.stephaniejames.world is my website. My book's available on Amazon. You can also go onto thesparkbook.net, or you can listen to my radio show. We'll continue to be announcing, as the film gets closer and closer here to being released. So that is Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on loudspeaker.fm. And it's dropped the next day in a podcast at thesparkpod.com and wherever we're in 58 different countries. So we're really easy to access, and I'd love to have people listen.
Wonderful. I will have all the links for everybody in the show notes and we can direct them there. And Stephanie, thank you. So it was wonderful.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to invest in your health and well-being. Since this podcast is brand new, reviews and subscribers are so vital for us to get off the ground and share this really important information. So if you found this information valuable, please post a review and subscribe to the podcast so you'll get our newest episodes. Also, if you know of someone who would benefit from this, please share it with them. You can also find us on Instagram at #InspireHealthPodcast. If you have a question that you'd like to be addressed, direct message me on Instagram or leave a comment on one of my posts. I would love to hear from you. And you can grab our show notes and free resources for each episode at inspirehealthpodcast.com. So be sure to go online and check it out.